My name is Caroline Poynton from Bury, Manchester, and I'm recording Carl Benjamin today off YouTube because I'm not copyrighting and paying attention. But people also need to start paying attention a little bit more to all of this because people have got it wrong where it began. Because none of this is ever going to get sorted out unless we get down to the bottom of where exactly it began. Everybody thinks it was Tony Blair. Wrong. They're all wrong. Tony Blair possibly put things in motion. He's being the government. He's putting the laws there or whatever. But it didn't begin with Tony Blair. We need to go back to exactly where it all began to figure this out and to get it correct and to put this all right. Because the way I see it, unless we go back down, unless we get down to the bottom of it, of where it all began, about Muslims, Islamic, about all this stuff, we need to get down to the bottom of where it all began. And if we don't get down to the bottom of where it all began, then it can't ever be fixed. And until we get down to the bottom of where it began, why it began, how it began, and what it began for, then none of it doesn't matter who, but it doesn't matter who's going to take over, nothing will get fixed or solved until we get down to the bottom of it. The bottom of it, there's been a few elephants in the room, haven't there? A couple that have been there in the background. Some of that we haven't really heard of, some we've heard of. Right? We hear about Tony Blair, we have Keir Starmer, we hear Nigel Farage, this, that, and the other, Lord Ali, whatever. Now, there's a person we know about, we do know, everybody knows this person, but they're not going down to the bottom about this person. And I just wonder why. I wonder if it's because the people are banned from speaking about it on YouTube or what. And I don't know what they're scared of, because I'll tell you fucking something now. I am not scared of going face to face with the devil and poltergeist. Because the poltergeist, he should not mess about with poltergeist child either. Poltergeist should not mess about with poltergeist kid. And that's me. He does not want to mess about with poltergeist child, because I'm poltergeist child and I am not scared of going face to face with this to deal with it. Because I tell you what, I'm correct, and if nobody likes what I'm going to say, then I think they need to go fucking start again. All of them. Because although I'm glad for people are doing this inquiry, great. But there's people, there's something there, poltergeist and the devil's here still, yeah. And unless we get rid of poltergeist and the devil, poltergeist and the devil just keep pulling everybody down. And the poltergeist and the devil, I'll tell you the person who that is. King fucking Charles. So people need to start getting to fucking grip and start fucking talking about that bastard. Because King fucking Charles opened the Oxford fucking Islamic University thing in 1986 or something. Done massive speeches since then. Now, I think that King Charles, I thought it was 96 to 97 where he changed his religion, but I think I'm wrong on that. I think it was a lot earlier, and I've been thinking I was wrong on that. That's why I've gone back to the subject and trying, figuring it out. So I've gone to 93, then it says 86. And I've got a feeling that he changed his religion before I was even born, which is 82. I was born in 82. I think William was born in 81 or 82. So I've got a feeling that King Charles changed his religion maybe 1979, 1980. King Charles has changed his religion and converted to Islam. Yeah, he has. Just because it's telling me there's no evidence because they've hid the evidence. Come on, well, what they're doing with all this, we know, they're just lying and fucking hiding things. So I don't give a fuck. If I fucking know, I know through my own family spirits that King Charles, even my granddad's telling me from up there in the spirit world, people are telling me that he's changed his religion to Islam. Now, it's okay to change his religion. Nobody's saying nobody can't change the religion. But he can't change his religion to Islam unless he give up his whole entire faith of being a Christian and a Protestant. Same way if you were Muslim and you want to convert to Christianity, you've got to give up your whole faith of Islam to convert to Christianity. Both ways is the same. Now, King Charles does not give up Christianity to become a Muslim because he swore an oath on the Bible in the Church of England under the court of law. And I've found out now that 7 sins of the Bible, and he has sinned the fucking Bible. Now, to sin the fucking Bible and do what he's done, he's basically shut the door on God forever. God can't go back into King Charles's space, and God can't ever go back into his space, into his spirit life, into the world of King Charles, because he's closed the door. King Charles has now let the devil in. So therefore, he is poltergeising. He is the fucking devil. And everybody needs to get to fucking grip with this, because if we don't, it's going to carry on and carry on no matter who's going to be the government, because King Charles is the one behind it all. He's the one in 93 did a big speech saying nobody's allowed to criticise, or the West no criticise of Islamic faith. And we owe him a big debt. Now, I don't know what this fucking debt is, because it was before we went to war with Iraq and Iran when he's saying that. So I don't understand what that is yet, but I will go through it. And also in the Quran, which I've just found out, 7 sins of the Quran, 7 sins of the Bible. In the Quran, it also says that murder is a sin in the Quran. It's the same as in the Bible. It's just, 7 commandments. If you murder, it's a sin. In the Quran, if you murder, it's a sin. Now, I don't know in the Quran, is that against anybody, or is that just against another Muslim? I don't know if you murder a Christian, is that still a sin? That's what I'm trying to say. If you murder a Jew, is that still a sin in the Quran? I don't know that part yet, because I've not got through to that part yet, because I don't understand why I'd need to read the Quran. But the only reason why I'm going to start studying it is because I want to know exactly what King Charles has been up to, because it's his fault. All of this belongs to King Charles. Now, people need to get a grip. Right? Starmer is to blame for a lot of things, but Starmer's the only touch of the fucking pillar of this. He's the only just a little fucking maggot in all of this. And to be only fair, I think Starmer has took a lot of flack for a lot of this stuff. And I don't think it's all Starmer's fault. I can't stand the cunt. It doesn't mean I'm letting him off the hook for anything. No, I'm not. Because he's done enough shit. He's seen the Bible as well as the rest of them. But the person that has been governing all of this isn't the government. The person that's been governing all of this is King Charles, the royal family. And this is maybe why the government are trying to squash the royal family. But I don't think that is all fair on William and Harry, because they're not really involved, because they were too young to be involved in 93. Because I was only a child then, and we're the same ages roughly. My sister's the same age as Harry near enough, and I'm the same age as William. I'm 43. I think William's 43 or 44. I don't know if... I think he's a bit older than me, or he's a bit older than me, so he might be 44 nearly now or something. Or I'm a bit older than him, one way or the other, but we're both the same age. So they were too young when King Charles started to do this shit. I think he changed his religion before he even had William and Harry. And I was trying to think, why would he do that? Is it because he killed Princess Diana, which he has? But I don't think that's the reason. I think he changed his religion before all that happened. So he changed his religion in the first place because he didn't want to be Christian. And he was an evil twat in the first place, and he got bullied in, it's in his fucking diary, innit? King Charles's diary. About getting bullied or whatever. So basically, he is a devil. He changed his religion before he even fucking became king or anything. Before he even had kids. Before he even had William and Harry. Before he got married in the Church of England, in the church. As a Christian. As a Protestant. And I thought it might be because he murdered murdered Prince Diana. Some people do that because they want to cover up being a pedo or a murderer. I think it makes them feel a bit better to become fucking a monk or whatever. Well, fuck off, because it doesn't, right? It doesn't change shit. They've seen the fucking Quran and the Bible at the end of the day. So you can't think, by becoming that's great. King Charles has changed his religion. Well, it's nothing to do with murder or being a paedophile. It's to do with basically Hitler, because he can't advocate to kill Jews and Christians when he's Christian. So he's had to change his religion so he can keep advocating to kill the Jews and the Christians. And unless we get down to the bottom of this for King Charles, then it ain't ever going to change. I'm sorry, this is true.
There are very few civilizations on Earth that have the same opinion as us, as a Christian heritage civilization.
Well, we did
Immigration has brought that home to us very, very sharply.
Until King Charles. No, we're not in just immigration, mate. King Charles. Yeah, but this is King Charles's fault. And Tony Blair and the rest of it.
English girls within the Muslim community.
By allowing this to happen.
The Green Party. But it's almost naked in how
I blame King Charles
predatory that it is. It expresses
for changing his religion in the first place.
Resources from the majority white
population and for begging to Islam for himself. Yeah.
And along comes Rupert Lowe. Where does he fit in your judgment, Khan?
These are getting a good channel up. This must be their new channel now. Good.
Well, my guest on this occasion is Carl Benjamin. He's the founder and co-host of the English political and social commentary podcast, The Lotus Eaters. He has a very wide following and has, I think, an excellent program, which I'm more than happy to recommend in this age when many of us like to hear what is being said directly online. So, thank you, Carl, for your time. Much appreciated.
I like Carl.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you, Carl.
On your YouTube channel, your self-description is simply Englishman. Can I ask what you mean by that simple description?
King Charles is in English, is German.
Yeah, it's taken me a long time to get to the understanding that that's the self-description I should use too.
I'm English.
Because you'll notice that if you look at a lot of people's sort of Twitter bios
and I'll tell you I'm an English woman because my family go back 1,000 years. There's not a Muslim or a black person in my family. I'm not being funny, I'm not racist. It is as it is. And we have our family, I've been put down for a long time.
So actually just being
and I'll tell you what, won't be put down anymore because my family have kept English tradition for over 1,000 years.
And it allows you to actually
and we have not mixed it with anybody else's religion or colour or anything else.
Has definite conclusions that it forces you to come to. And actually when you say, well, I'm just an Englishman or an Australian or an American or something like that.
Well, it might not all be English now, some of us are in Irish or whatever.
Your cultural background, you're telling people a lot about the things that they can stereotypically expect to know about you.
But from my granddad's side, and his dad, and his dad,
rather than
we all come from Yorkshire.
Essentially a kind
we came from Yorkshire.
Mathematical duel between people who
I emigrated. Well, apparently I was born in Manchester, but if anything, my mum emigrated.
In the place where people wanted to end, because once one person has one interpretation of the propositions and another person has another interpretation, The only place to go from that is to say, well, the other person is acting in bad faith. The other person is actually a liar. They're actually deceitful because they didn't have the same interpretation as I do. And the thing that is assumed when you have that conversation is an identical perspective of both interlocutor. They assume that both people have the same background, have the same intentions, have the same understanding of the world to interpret the propositions in exactly the same way. And so we see most of online political discussion is just a pure ideology that is all really informed by the identities that's underneath the ideology. And because it's propositional, because it's logical,
and because online,
the actual discourse is ground down in this rather than just being normal and talking like a human being, in which we can actually be concerned about one another as people rather than the accuracy of the ideology that we're espousing. And so I think that's actually a much more human way of having a discussion. It's a much more human way of presenting yourself. And frankly, I think it's just more honest.
I can say, I mean, obviously, with what I'm saying, it's saying there there is no evidence for King Charles changing religion, but I don't care what the evidence are because I know I'm right.
He now considers himself as British, but not English, insofar as Englishness is
as people rather than the accuracy of the ideology that we're espousing. And so I think that's actually a much more human way of having a discussion. It's a much more human way of presenting yourself. And frankly, I think it's just more honest. So that's why I've got that there.
Konstantin Kisin last year opened up an interesting debate. He said that as a man of Russian heritage, he now considers himself as British, but not English, insofar as Englishness is seen as an ethnicity. How do you see that? Why bring ethnicity into Britishness?
Because it matters.
I think he's correct. So British is specifically a civic identity. And the
British, he's not British then.
Actually, it's very complex.
Actually, no, he's not British.
Was assumed to encompass the ethnic identities of the British
Let's get that right. No, they're all getting it wrong. No, you still got it wrong, Carl Benjamin. Because to be British, English is I'm English. I was born in Manchester. My mum's born in Manchester. My dad's born in Macclesfield. My granddad's born in Stockport. My great-granddad, I think, born in Macclesfield. My great-great-granddad or whatever is born in Yorkshire. And so on and so forth. So I'm not British. I'm English. To be British, you need to be born in England. Your parents might be born in Scotland or Ireland or Wales, or maybe you're born in Scotland, Wales. Maybe, say, like, for me, if I'm British, right, here's an example of who is British. William and Harry. They're British. Because the mum comes from Wales and they were born in England. And the dad is German. So they're not English, they are British. If you were born in Ireland and your parents were born in England, then that makes you British, you're not English. It probably doesn't, if your parents are born in England, you were born in Ireland, it doesn't make you Irish. Then you become British. So what I mean is when they say somebody's British, no, you've got that wrong. Because if someone's born, even if they're born here, if their parents ain't born here, then they're not British. Because their DNA won't be British, it'll be German. Or Russian or wherever they're from, like King Charles. Everybody thinks he's British or English. No, he's fucking not, he's German. He was born in Germany. Victoria was British, yes. But that does not make him British or English. It makes him still German. His DNA is German. So you got that wrong, Carl Benjamin. You need to get this, they need to get this right. We need to get this correct. Because if it is serious, because if we don't get it correct, then nothing's going to be right. My identity, my DNA will be fucking English. It won't come back British. Because for me to be British, I need to have Scottish, Irish and Welsh in me. I've not got Scottish, Irish and Welsh in me. I've got only English in me, so that makes me, what does that make me then? English. And if I'm not allowed to say that I am English, what the fuck, what do they want me to identify as then? Oh, what? Come on.
Englishness is seen as an ethnicity. How do you see that? Why bring ethnicity into Britishness?
Because it works.
Well, I think Constantine is right there. I think he's correct. So British is specifically a civic identity. And the thing... actually, it's very complex.
Well, yeah,
British was assumed to encompass the ethnic identities of the British Isles. But after the British Empire and the civic expansion of British citizenship, it has become a civic identity that has become a kind of identifier for people who want to belong to a certain kind of world. For example, you could quite easily say that Australians, Canadians, and New Zealanders are all British. Like it's actually
because we went to colonise there, yeah, and Americans.
It's actually imprinted completely on your cultures and impossible to deny. I mean, the fact that we can have this conversation in English as your first language, I assume, is
and probably Africa and Cape Town as well, and whatever. You could probably say they're English.
Begun. And so this civic identity has expanded around the world, so it isn't actually useful to merely describe white and British people as being merely British, because it's an incorporative identity that is also adopted by many of the immigrants we have now. Because I mean, of course, I'm sure you'll know that.
But it can't be in a corporate. We've still got it on. It's not an incorporeal identity. To be British, you've got to be Welsh, Irish, Scottish, or English.
And the immigration into Britain has ramped up.
If your parents ain't born on it, what it needs to be British, mate, is if you, like I just explained very easy, if you're born in England but your parents are born in Ireland,
trying to identify and affiliate with the country.
It'll probably make you Irish, but then you'd be British.
Taking something away from the native population of
You've
the country.
You've got part of your family from Ireland, part of your family from England, then you're British.
It wasn't contested.
Unless you've got family off the island and you've got mixed family in the island from the island, then you're not
and
British.
therefore rendering sort of borders of it.
Then you don't belong to the island.
End of. Making the definition itself not very useful.
If your parents,
and so this is why the question
if you're born here and your parents say you're not British,
where it's like, well, okay, I'm happy to concede.
You're British if you're part of the island.
He feels he's British, he likes Britain, he wants to affiliate.
Britain means the whole of Britain. It doesn't mean the rest of the world. It means the island.
Ethnicity, as in you inherit your ethnicity, you can't change it. So he's correct to say
and you can't change it,
English. And so
and he's not British,
what we have here is the civic layer of life, and then what I think is best described as
you can't even say you can't even say he's
British. In the West, used to thinking of ourselves in terms of tribes, but actually a lot of what we do is
and once again,
of tribal understanding.
Let's get down to this once again. This is King Charles's fault because the royal family went to cover up that they want Germ.
Agrees with these same premises, the same assumptions, but actually immigration forced us to understand that these are actually parochial assumptions to Western Europeans, Northwestern Europeans, and in many cases, in particular, the sort of Germanic Protestant assumptions of
Germanic, so that Germany.
And then you can be
Germanic,
more specific to some of them are specifically English assumptions, rather than being actually like Scottish or Welsh assumptions. So the question of ethnicity has raised to the fore in that way, but also it's what this has revealed is actually the value sets that groups of people have and adopt and are inculcated into through just long habituation of living in their own cultures. These are things that are particular to them. They're not universal.
Yeah, that's because people are mixed up and they don't know where they're meant to come from and they don't know where they are.
And that's also what Constantine, I
So
think,
they just assume they're British because that's
it's
what
not
they've
to
been
say that
told they
other
are.
people can't look at those values and say, "Oh, I appreciate those values, and I would like to live among other people with those values," which, of course, is what Constantine has done. But it's not something that is separate to the people. These values are an expression of these people, and so you can't just take them away, separate them from the people, and then have them adopted wholesale by another people. This is where ideology becomes actually so pernicious, and is in fact one of the reasons why all of the sort of liberal and post-liberal revolutions of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries are so destructive.
Because I don't think that people that aren't British, I don't think they should be identifying themselves as British. Why would they do that? What they ashamed of their own culture and colour and race?
When they apply what they see as the consequences, the sort of exigencies of the English habit of life, when they apply that to their own countries, they realise that the social structures required to uphold that don't exist. And instead, in their place, are a series of entrenched, traditional, non-English, therefore non-liberal structures that have to be destroyed. This is why the French aristocracy had to be beheaded. This is why the Russian aristocracy and the Tsar had to be killed. This is why in China the Cultural Revolution had to destroy the Chinese heritage.
This is why we should be allowed to chop the king's head off.
Something that relate to the ideology. And the ideology itself is an extraction, distillation of a limited number of principles from English political life.
In the Bible.
Like I said, the social structure to actually uphold them.
To actually
what you have
them,
is chaos. And what you have is a desperate attempt to impose a foreign order on a country that, might want the consequences of what is being offered.
That's King Charles,
doesn't actually know how to get there. And that's why I think, honestly, the 20th century was just the worst century mankind has ever had. Ever, actually.
And it's not just on us. I'm not just thinking about it. I'm thinking about
what is
England,
the place
and then I'm thinking about all the other people
nationalism and indeed patriotism,
all other countries as well. This is bad. Every country.
If you think of David Goodhart's work all those years ago, the Somewheres and the Anywheres, the global citizens versus those who still feel a real affiliation with the place
and their own colours and their own race
and its mores, versus those who see themselves as above all of that.
We're going to have
and
to
then
take it back
in the case
50
of Britain,
years,
you have 15% of the British population now not even born in Britain, and seeking sometimes to absorb British values and uphold them, other times actually to oppose them. Is there a place for a sensible nationalism, and what does it look like?
I think that without a kind of sensible nationalism, then we succumb to the global liberal order and we lose everything. So without this, then essentially our countries are dissolved conceptually. And it's only a matter of time until these concepts are put into action and the country physically is dissolved with it, until it is nothing more than a geographic area with a set of liberal rules attached to it, and instead not a people anymore. Because it's important to remember that our conception of countries and nations has become very detached from what a traditional conception of a country or a nation is. There's a great example of this during
and I'm not being funny, but the Muslims are thinking they're better.
The Athenians,
no, they're not.
Just
they think they know better about the Quran. No, they don't. I don't think that Athens know about the Quran properly.
But Athens, as the buildings, but Athens was fine because its people were safe on Salamis. And after the Persians left Greece and had been defeated, the Athenians just went back and rebuilt, and Athens is now still the capital of Greece. So the geography of it is actually less important than the people who inhabit it and actually carry out these traditions in their lives. And if we forget that, if we divorce or abstract the traditions into, or the political habits into a doctrine that can just be applied to anyone, well, then we'll find that we have actually been disconnected from something that we didn't realise that we carried ourselves. And I think we're watching this in British political life in particular, but probably also in other countries, in the way that our politics is coarsening our politics is becoming a lot more, frankly, dangerous. We saw this with a Labour MP called Jess Phillips, who was narrowly elected in 2024, but also she suffered a series of aggressions that I think you could say were a form of intimidation from a certain community in her constituency in Birmingham. And honestly, I was a bit worried about this because, I mean, I've got no love for Jess Phillips, but this was going well outside of the bounds of established and traditional English political life. You don't slash someone's tyres, you don't vandalise their constituency headquarters. You make your arguments and then you vote and then we see who wins. But that's not what this community was doing. And then when she was accepting her the fact that she had won and whatever little ceremony they do, she was heckled and abused by men in this constituency, and it became very apparent that.
And that's Jess Phillips, isn't it? The one that did the rape.
Profess a series of values in the abstract all you want, but if there are communities living among you who don't believe these values, then they don't really matter.
Well, they're talking
they only
shit.
Matter if everyone actually abides by
them. Because
murder
in the Quran is
and
a
when
sin.
you have large numbers of people who don't, you realise that, okay, well, if we continue on like this, we can say that Britain is still the geographic landmass, and we can claim to adhere to a certain set of laws and rules and norms. But in reality, what is actually happening is something different.
I mean, I don't know about.
Because actually the character of the people really matters. And all of these things were really predicated on the character of a certain kind of people behaving in a certain kind of way because they thought it was the right thing to do. And if those people are gone, then it's not the same country, then the laws will not abide. I mean, I'd loathe to cite Rousseau on something, but he was correct when he said the true constitution is actually engraved in the hearts of men. And if these other people don't truly believe, because it's the culture in which they've been brought up, it's the only thing they know, then
they're lying
it's just not the same. And so sensible nationalism must take that into account, because otherwise the nations themselves will be lost.
And to do black magic in that's a sin.
Because one assumes, and I think you've said this yourself, that there's never been any mass appetite in the UK for the kind of immigration that you've experienced there. The same could be said of
when
Europe.
They're doing this raping stuff, they're doing black magic.
31% of people in this country now were not born
that's
here.
A sin.
And I'm
I don't know how that can't be part of.
But it needs to be managed in a certain way.
Well, that needs to be in the severe law then, doesn't it?
In my case, my Australianness, which is derived from a Britishness, no doubt about that at all, in the process. So it immediately raises the questions around
Australia.
Why have ordinary people, perhaps they've lost that imprint of the Constitution on their hearts and have not defended them, been allowed, have they allowed this to happen? And why is it that with the people on the hands of power, the levers of power in our community, felt so able to essentially put at risk everything that, if you like, makes the people who live in Britain English, the people who live in Australia Australian?
I think this is a really good question, and it is probably the question of our time. I can't help but wonder if the long peace after World War II is something to do with it.
King Charles,
because,
yes.
I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with Francis
Fukuyama's thesis. And I've just said that. I said we need to go back about the war.
A fairly malign book, but fundamentally the core critique of it is true.
Go back to King Charles and the royal family.
It was assumed that the world would become a liberal
world. The royal
world,
family, mate. I've changed it all liberally.
Historic need for nations and borders and
orders and all
authority
these things
would essentially wither away, much in the same way that the communists thought that the state would wither away after the communist revolution. And we would essentially be atomic individuals who are free from all obligation and responsibility, who could just trivially live our lives for the rest of the time.
Go to the royal family.
That thesis turned out not to be true, because it turns out that a core part, and this was kind of contained within Francis Fukuyama's own thesis,
King Charles,
he cites Plato's tripartite soul, the rational side, the animal side, and then the spirited side. Well, the spirited side is collective. It is not an individual aspect of humanity. And so this is where things like national pride come in. And this has been...
But King Charles doesn't have any national pride for Christianity or the
Nazi
country.
regime, because the Nazi regime was built entirely on this spirited part of the soul, which is not good. No kind of unbalance within a human soul is a good thing. A well-rounded person should have all of these characteristics. But when you decide, well, one aspect of the soul is actually a genocidal monster, well, then you do everything you can to wither it. You do everything you can to immiserate it. And what this has meant is that people feel now
to eliminate him,
far less like they are carriers of their own civilization. With the philosophical rationale of liberalism, saying, no, you've been liberated from the chains of civilization now. You get to be the atomic individual at the end of history. You don't have a responsibility to carry your own culture. You don't have a responsibility to carry your own civilization through into the future and pass it down to the next generations. And I think that's the real spirit that's been lost, the essence that's been lost. Because
that's been lost from King Charles and the royal family then.
With man on the street interviews from people from the 1950s and the 1960s, where not only do they seem far more articulate, they understand themselves as being representatives of something that should be well represented on the world stage. And this idea that you actually are kind of deputized, whether you like it or not, as a bearer of your culture, therefore you should be a good example of your culture, is something that is just alien.
Yeah, but King Charles isn't.
Imagine me saying exactly that.
Now you're saying that, you've got to go down to King Charles and the Bible.
What, is he going to think?
We've got to go down to King Charles and the Bible,
I'm going to sound like a babbling lunatic to him, because I know that on the streets of England, I'm going to sound like a babbling lunatic. But I think I'm correct. I think that is the
by him changing his religion and doing what he's done.
Like, if you go back 100
and
years,
being the defender of faith, when there's no such thing, you can't be defender of faith. Yeah, because you can't be defender of faith, you've got to be defender of one faith, you've got to be one faith and one faith.
And I'm a representative of this, and therefore I have a duty to dress well, to speak
King Charles,
to work hard, to make sure
King
that
Charles
I'm protected,
I was going to say,
and I do my part.
King Charles thinks that his duty isn't to Christianity and the Christians and the country. King Charles thinks his duty is to protect Muslims and the Muslim Islam and Islamic and the extremists. He's not even protecting Muslims, he's actually doing it to the extremists. He's the one, they're the one, he's the one, they're the ones that are creating Islamic extremists. Because it is getting silly on how we're blaming them, they're blaming us, we're blaming them, they're blaming us. We all they seem to be blaming us, we seem to be blaming them, we all seem to be blaming each other, and not actually getting down to the real point of who this really is and what this really is about. And once the points have come out and what this really is about and who's done this and who is really cooperating this and who is behind this, the elephants in the rooms, the big guns, the big cats, once all this is out, then maybe that Islam, the Islamists, Islam can still have their religion and we can have our religion, because in the Bible it does say you're not permitted to kill your enemy. There is no permitting to kill any enemy. Enemies can live side by side. Just keep your whereabouts, and same with, and if your enemy comes to attack you, then that's when you fight back. Now our enemy is fighting us and attacked us. It's not really Islam that's attacking us, not Islam. And that's probably where they're right, when they keep saying stop blaming Muslims or whatever. No, we can't stop blaming Muslims for the crime they've done. No, the crimes they've done, no. But we do have to think about this. It ain't Islamists. It isn't Islam. It is the people behind driving this, driving the car. And the people behind the person and the people behind driving that car is the governments as well. But the people that were behind the car in the first place is the royal family. King Charles.
In my civilization. And I just think that there is just no concept of that at all anymore. And so people don't take care of themselves. They don't think, I have to behave well, I have to dress well, I have to make sure that I do the right thing every day. Because why should I? And when you have a culture of that, with that kind of attitude for a long period of time, the people who are born and raised in it don't even have the advantage of being able to cast that off.
I was going to say, we don't have that advantage because we don't have a king. We don't have the king. And now they're trying to destroy that for William, which I think is very, very sad. No, I think it's sad what King Charles has done. He's a sad man. And he's lying about cancer. He's to make people feel sorry for him. Well, I don't feel sorry for King Charles. I don't care. I'm sorry, mate. I don't wish cancer upon anybody, but I don't think he's got cancer. I think the nose is alcohol, to be honest fair, because anybody with a big red nose like he's got is... my mum's got one because she was an alcoholic. My dad probably I would have had one if he was still here because he was an alcoholic. So I think King Charles has been an alcohol. I see he's got cancer. There's no receipts for cancer. Where is the hospital receipt? Where's documents to say he's got cancer? Well, what's he got to be afraid of showing the people that for? Why couldn't we have seen him in hospital and he could give a little speech to the people and not about Ramadan or Islam? Why does he not want to talk about God? Because he's not allowed to talk about God in the Quran.
This is something that happened a lot with, frankly, the boomers in the 60s and 70s.
He would still be allowed to talk about God if he hasn't changed his religion. Just because if you, like me, just because I've not looked in the Quran, all I've done is ask Google a question. Google's just give me a couple of, the answer a bit. I'm just going off what that's saying, AI, Google, whatever you call it. And the same with the Bible, because I wanted to see what is it when you sin the Bible? What is sin in the Bible? What is that? And what is sin in the Quran? So I've asked Google that and it's given me so much things. Murder, theft, and that's the same as in the Bible. Murder, theft is the same thing. I'm not sure, like I say, about raping and things. That's not what I've asked. Maybe if I ask Google, what is it when raping a woman? What does that class in the Bible and what does that class in the Quran? Maybe that's a question I need to ask. Because if murder is a sin in the Quran, murder is a sin in the Bible, why does any of them think that murder's okay? From any religion? Can't be.
70s, with the sort of, the hippie movements and whatnot, but they were essentially trying to cast off their own civilization. And, like,
60s and 70s,
are kind of deputized, whether you like it or not, as a bearer of your culture, and therefore you should be a good example of your culture, is something that is just alien now. I mean, imagine me saying exactly that to a teenager on the streets of Australia. What, is he going to think that I've got a point, or am I going to sound like a babbling lunatic to him? Because I know that on the streets of England, I'm going to sound like a babbling lunatic. But I think I'm correct. I think that is the issue, is that before, like if you go back 100 years, people had a collective sense of ownership over their own civilizations. And so collectively they thought, well, I have a stake in this, I have a part in this, and I am a representative of this, and therefore I have a duty to dress well, to speak well, to work hard, to make sure that I am protective and I do my part in my civilization. And I just think that there is just no concept of that at all anymore. And so people don't take care of themselves. Yeah. They don't think, I have to behave well, I have to dress well, I have to make sure that I do the right thing every day.
They all think
Because
they're
why
praying to
should
Islam.
I? And when you have a culture of that, with that kind of attitude, for a long period of time, the people who are born and raised in it don't even have the advantage of being able to cast that off. And I think this is something that happened a lot with, frankly, the boomers in the 60s and 70s, with the sort of, the hippie movements and whatnot, where they were essentially trying to cast off their own civilization. And like John Lennon style, imagine there's no heaven, there's no countries, all this sort of thing. Well, at least they had the advantage of being raised by parents and in a culture that didn't think that. At least they had the advantage of living in a culture that did consider that it was a separate thing in itself and that this was worthy of being carried forward into the future. But once you're 50 or 60 years down the line from that, and you're raising generation after generation that doesn't think that it should be upholding something, but carrying something forward, well, that you don't even have a frame of reference to be able to begin to make that argument.
He's not thinking it's...
And so they don't
He's
understand
not trying to uphold that, to pass that on to William and Harry, is it?
They are responsible for it, and they should take care of it.
Yeah, and he's not doing that, has he? He's not done that to
really why the people in government can be so cavalier about all of this, and that's why we're just looking around. I mean, I don't know about Australia, but England is a scarred country.
I'm not just talking about the government. We have to go away from the government. We have to get King Charles and the royal family. And then we'll come back to the government. Because it's all linked together. It's all linked together.
To start addressing the problem, even conceptually, would require us to admit that almost everything we've done for the last 50 years has been atrocious. And a complete mistake and needs to be unwound.
And that's what I said.
If we want to have anything that's worthwhile
now
passing
I've said that. Now, if we need to go back to the royal family, what I said, we want to get down to the bottom of this, we have to go back.
Indifference.
Back to the bottom of it.
It is just easier to just get on with your day and just
I've already said when we started this, I am not scared of coming up to face with poltergeist, the devil.
It's 40 years ago now that I remember listening to our national broadcaster, the ABC, talking about a survey amongst British school children, which sought to extract their views on what it meant to be British. It was embarrassingly trite beyond belief.
Well, I know what it's like. I know what it means to be British in English.
Literally. There was no
and I never went to school very much, you say.
Of Britain as the, if you like, the place that struggled, saw bloodshed long and hard.
I'm not saying this.
The Magna Carta, the War of the Roses, the whole evolution over time of democracy. You go to Oxford and you see the memorial to the three Latimer. I've now got a mental block. The three great reformers who died at the stake. They surrendered their lives to the awful death of being burnt alive at the stake for freedom of conscience. You think of the abolition of slavery. You think of decent labour laws. You think of the extension of the vote. None of that seemed to feature at all. So immediately raises the question of who designed a curriculum that did not even basically outline, apparently, to an enormous number of British children how they came to live in the land that they did and what it was like, how it had been shaped.
This is exactly the question.
Yeah, and the only way I figured all this out is by growing up looking into a
civilizational issue at the time. Because education, this is a great point that
I didn't even know who my granddad was. I didn't even know who I was.
Which is, education isn't about passing information, it's about passing culture. And this is the point that you're making here is, well, children should be educated to understand that they are the bearers of their own culture, their own history, and
that's why everything's become Muslim and Islam.
And it's actually terrible to deny them.
That's terrible.
Because once you deny them an understanding that you have something to live up to,
it's in the
well, why should they live up to anything? Why shouldn't they just become frivolous and irreverent and
making people sin
concerned
both
only
sides.
with the pursuit of rights rather than the discharge of duties?
Yeah.
And The answer is, well, there isn't any particular reason, is there?
There is
Why
no
should
rights.
they
We don't
think
have any
anything
rights.
of their own culture? Which is remarkable when you look around and you go, okay, but we actually have quite tremendous civilizations. You realize how insular our mindset has become and how narrow it's become. There's actually a very, for all of our talk of multiculturalism and our worldliness, we're actually very inexperienced, and we assume that everything will just carry on like it always has, despite the fact that the trajectory we are on is a road to ruin. And things are getting worse every single day. Again, I can't speak for Australia, but in Britain, things are just getting worse every single day. And they have been for decades now. And yet we persist with the same ideas and the same strategies, the same kind of education, the same kind of opinions and attitudes that have led us to this place, expecting different from the same. And until we get those, until we understand that it is our entire world view and our approach to our own civilizations that is the thing that is at issue, nothing can change. We're trapped on these rails.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. So go back to the reality of where they started from, the bottom.
Somehow an inversion of the rightful order that evolved as Britain built a
Hopefully
democracy.
we get the right Prime Minister in.
That government was there to do the will of the people, protect the people, advance their interests, and it was to be a function of the people, if you like, and the will of the people. Over time, particularly, I have to say, as Britain deserted its Christian faith and then secularised to an extraordinary degree over the last century, government has become God. And it's almost as though in becoming God, remembering that politicians are only human, they prove not to be up to the task, and then an open contempt starts to expose itself. And it seems to me, as I look at Britain, and I don't want to be in any way smug, I think I'm a great admirer of Britain, and I fully acknowledge that Australia owes an enormous debt to Britain. There are parts of the British model that, or the English model, that we've not inherited. We don't have a class system, for example. We're quite irreverent. And what have you. But nonetheless, we owe you a great deal. And now we seem to live in this world where
and a lot of
Islam owes
us a great deal, but King Charles is saying that we owe them a deal.
We let them pretend that they're God. We almost bow before them. We find they're not up to it. And now we think the answer is to belt them harder and harder and harder. And all that happens is that the horse, being ever harder flogged, fails more and more to haul the load.
Yeah, but we've got no God, mate.
I don't actually have time to follow Australian politics as well as everything else I do, so I can't comment on the situation with your
I don't know about Australia either.
But I think it's probably profoundly observable from outside that our leaders are people of lesser quality than in previous generations.
Yeah.
And so
maybe in Australia, I think in a lot of countries it's the same.
The state finds itself in actually a paradoxical position, which is it is taken on the mantle as the enforcer of rights that were designed to protect the population from it. So the whole point, as you said, going back to Magna Carta, and even the old Anglo-Saxon view of what kingship and subjecthood was. It was very temperate, it was very moderate, and it was always very limited. And I'm of the opinion that essentially all of English constitutional history is this kind of subconscious Anglo-Saxon attempt to shrug off the worst of the Norman yoke. Everything has been done to try and stop the Normans from being tyrannical, basically. And we've got to a point now where our politicians feel that their job, I mean, we are literally, at the moment, we have a Prime Minister who is literally a human rights lawyer, who is trying to impose this regime of unfettered and unlimited human rights on all of humanity.
It's not
the
just
problem that he has is that his powers are limited only to Britain. So he is
and this is why King Charles
privilege the minorities over the majority. He is forced to make sure that any immigrants who just, no matter how they get here, whether they illegally break into our country or not, as far as he's concerned, in his mind, because he is a very extreme liberal,
That's King
he
Charles.
believes that they're entitled to as much, if not more, as the
King
native
Charles
population.
saying that, not
And
the
so
government.
you're completely correct that the state does take on this aspect of God.
King Charles has said
because the
that.
state has annexed to itself the authority to
He's
be the
not God,
enforcer
he's
of
the
rights
devil.
that it was always the infringer of.
They're not
It was
God,
always
mate.
the
They
thing
got
that
that
was
wrong. The
infringing
devil.
on the rights. And so we've given the state a kind of schizophrenic personality. The state is the oppressor. That's what does the oppressing. And that's why all the rights of Englishmen were developed in the first place, were consciously developed. They were just assumed before, but now they have to be properly articulated. And the people in charge believe in them as well. They believe that, we believe in your rights, but we're also the people who exercise all of this power. And once someone has power, they very rarely want to give it up.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to imagine
King
how
Charles.
we're going to actually be able
King
to
Charles
cut back
don't
the
want to
scope
give it up.
of the state in Britain.
He
There's
should
a
never be
famous
king in the
A.J.P.
first
Taylor
place.
quote that goes something along the lines of, in 1950,